here singing tonight. You already caught up. You about to pass us, Sheila.
All right, you got to tell us some good stuff. I know you got out a CD. I remember a CD, as I mentioned, the song The Candy Liquor, but that's not the only CD you have out. How many CDs do you have out now?
We have a total of 12 CDs now. The latest is entitled I Got Beat Out. Ooh, about to fall. And I'm about to fall just looking at you.
So, Marvin Sease wasn't really who we thought he was. Apparently, there was a dark side to the soul singer, filled with violence, abuse, and aggressive behavior. But how could someone who created such beautiful music live such a dark life? What went wrong? Could there have been a reason for all these?
Came home one night, my lady said it was over because she found someone that could make love to her better than me. So I got beat out.
You can tell that it was really bad. Whether it was with lovers or strangers in public, Marvin was reported to have had a history of abusing and getting aggressive with people around him. But how did we miss this part of him? Did he really hide it? Or did people just love his music so much they overlooked such a dangerous, dark character? Let's get into it.
But you've been out here in the circuit for like 20 years.
Close to 20 years now.
That's a long time to have been out here.
Marvin Sease kicked off his music journey singing gospel down in South Carolina, rolling with a group called the Five Gospel Crowns. But gospel wasn't cutting it for him, so he packed up and took off to New York while still pretty young. Once he got there, he linked up with another gospel crew, but his heart was leaning toward R&B. Ditching gospel for good, he pulled his brothers into a band and tried making a name for himself. They even came up with a dramatic name for the group, but that didn't exactly go as planned. The whole thing fell apart before it could take off. He didn't let that stop him, though. He stuck to performing, covering songs at a Brooklyn spot called Casablanca, slowly carving out his own lane. Eventually, he put out an album on his own, and one song in particular started getting attention. That's when things started moving, at least in the Southern Circuit, where bars, juke joints, and blues festivals became his stomping ground. The buzz got him a record deal, which meant his album got a second life with a bigger label.
To my knowledge, you're probably the first blues singer that has actually been able to be on another label other than just blues. Is that correct?
The second. B.B. King is the first, and I'm the second on a major label, right?
This time, he threw in a track that was bold, borderline scandalous, and completely unbothered by radio play, or lack thereof. And just like that, he locked in a die-hard fan base, especially with women.
You feel like you're ready for this. This is a good business, but it's a hard business. You don't want to tackle this business if you're half-stepping.
For the next decade, he kept dropping records under major labels, staying in the game even without mainstream radio backing him. He had one song that managed to sneak onto the R&B charts, but chart positions didn't really define his impact. His sound was often compared to a couple of other big names in the genre, but he stayed in his own lane, playing by his own rules. Marvin had a way of pulling people in.
I thought you already caught up. You about to pass us, Sheila.
All right, you got to tell us some good stuff. I know you got out a CD. I remember a CD, as I mentioned, the song The Candy Liquor, but that's not the only CD you have out. How many CDs do you have out now?
We have a total of 12 CDs now. The latest is entitled I Got Beat Out. Ooh, about to fall. And I'm about to fall just looking at you.
On stage, he was electric, half preacher, half showman, serving up blues-heavy love songs that had audiences hanging on to every word. But when the spotlight faded, things got a little murkier. Behind closed doors, the stories weren't so smooth. People whispered about his temper, how it could flip in a second. There were backstage clashes, messy relationships, and rumors that some of those situations crossed a line. Nothing ever blew up into major headlines or courtroom drama, but certain circles never forgot. The way some saw it, he didn't just sing about desire. He lived it, sometimes to the extreme. Southern soul wasn't for the shy. Fans wanted big personalities, big emotions, and performances that felt like a sermon and a confession all at once. Marvin gave them exactly that. But living at that intensity 24/7 came with a cost. People who spent time around him said the same fire that made him unforgettable on stage made him unpredictable behind the scenes. Long tours, late nights, and the pressure to keep his name alive in the industry wore on him. Mood swings hit hard, and bandmates often took the fallout. Some said it was just part of the business. Plenty of artists from his era had that same intensity. Others saw it differently. To them, Sease wasn't just passionate. He was a ticking time bomb. And then there were the women. He built his whole career on singing about them, to them, for them. So it was a little ironic that the darkest whispers were always about how he treated them when the music stopped. Rumors floated around for years. Stories about explosive relationships, about women who got too close and paid the price. Nothing ever made it to court, nothing ever made headlines, but the stories stuck. Maybe that's what happened when you live just outside the mainstream. No Hollywood cameras, no big label execs breathing down his neck, just enough fame to be untouchable, just enough anonymity to keep the mess out of the press. For Marvin Sease, the music always drowned out the noise. Even if his name never made the tabloids, the stories didn't just disappear. People who worked with him, loved him, or even just watched from a distance couldn't shake the feeling that something was always simmering beneath the surface. Some chalked it up to the usual struggles: addiction, personal demons, the kind of success that hits fast and hard when someone isn't ready for it. Fame didn't fix things. It just turned up the volume. When an artist stepped into the spotlight without solid footing, without control, without a handle on their own baggage, that pressure had to go somewhere. And more often than not, the ones closest to them took the hit. People love to romanticize this kind of story, to act like chaos was just part of being a genius, like it was the price of admission for greatness. But that was the lie the industry kept recycling. Talent didn't have to come with destruction. The idea that artists had to be a mess to make something real was one of the most dangerous myths in music. Greatness wasn't about losing control. It was about having it. And control didn't come from fame or money. It came from doing the work long before either showed up. Therapy, self-awareness, discipline. That's what kept artists in the game. Without that, success was just a spotlight, exposing every flaw, every unhandled demon, making them impossible to ignore. Marvin never fully crossed over, but in his lane, he was a legend. His music stuck around, his name locked into Southern soul history. But for the ones who knew him, or even just heard the whispers, his story was more than that. Talent alone wasn't enough. If an artist wasn't ready for the weight that came with success, the music would outlive them, but the mess they left behind would last just as long.
I like to say that my music is a music that people can just relate to in their lives.
If Marvin had come up in a different era, would he have blown up? That was the question that always came up when Candy Liquor entered the conversation.
Baby, let me be your candy.
That song didn't just push boundaries, it bulldozed right through them. This wasn't some track you'd hear on the radio during a morning drive. It was the kind of song people whispered about, the kind played when kids weren't around, the kind fans begged for at shows where nobody was looking for anything rated PG.
It's a song about lovemaking, and I always thought I was the best lover in the world. I always thought of myself as that.
Mainstream radio had its limits, and Marvin wasn't just crossing the line. He was miles past it. R&B and blues had always played around with innuendo. Marvin Gaye had his smooth, seductive thing. Prince had his freaky, artsy edge. But Sease? He wasn't hinting. He was saying it straight up. No metaphors, no sugarcoating, just pure, unfiltered want in that deep, bluesy drawl. He knew exactly what he was serving, and so did his audience. They weren't here for subtle. They wanted music that felt like a packed juke joint at 2 a.m. Loud, sweaty, no room for pretense, just strong drinks, a tight band, and people who already knew what they came for.
And Candy Liquor is my biggest selling song.
The song took over the Chitlin Circuit, the underground network of Southern clubs where black audiences went for real, no BS soul music. Candy Liquor wasn't for radio, and that was the point. It was for the grown folks who weren't checking for polished, crossover-friendly hits. This one spread the old-school way. DJs sneaking it into sets, bootleg tapes floating around, party playlists getting a little bolder. By the time Marvin hit the stage, the crowd didn't just know the song, they demanded it. If he tried to leave without performing Candy Liquor, forget it. Nobody was going anywhere. Marvin was just too early. A few decades later, artists were getting away with lyrics just as explicit, probably even wilder, and instead of raising eyebrows, they were topping charts. The difference? The industry finally caught up. Now, an artist could say whatever they wanted, and as long as it had the right production. Some moody synths, spaced out beats, a little tortured genius energy. It wasn't just allowed, it was praised. Someone like The Weeknd took the same unapologetic approach to R&B and turned it into platinum records, sold out arenas, and a stack of awards.
Just fuck two bitches before I saw you. And you gon' have to do it up my...
If Marvin had been born at the right time, would he have been pulling the same numbers? Maybe. But back then, Candy Liquor wasn't mainstream material. The industry just wasn't ready. Back then, R&B had its fair share of provocateurs. Prince, Rick James, Millie Jackson, but they had a balance. A few radio-friendly hits here, some industry support there. Marvin, he wasn't worried about making his music digestible. He did what he wanted, how he wanted, and let the chips fall where they fell. No major label machine, no slick PR team, no streaming algorithms shoving his music onto curated playlists. All he had was word of mouth, packed out shows, and the simple fact that once someone heard Candy Liquor, they weren't unhearing it.
A little 6-year-old kid came up to me one day and told me that he loved all my music. And so he says, I know all your songs too. I said, how old are you?
Was he ahead of his time or exactly where he needed to be? Depends on how you see it. If he came up now, maybe he'd be racking up streams, mixing old school soul with glossy modern beats, and headlining festivals. But if he was anything other than Marvin Sease in 1986, would he have built the underground empire that kept his name alive? Candy Liquor wasn't just a song. It was proof that you don't need industry approval to have a loyal audience. Sease found his crowd, and they never let him go.
I like to be considered as a soulful rhythm and blues artist.
And Marvin didn't just get on stage, he owned it. His shows weren't for the easily shocked, and he made that clear the second he grabbed the mic. If someone showed up expecting a smooth, polished R&B set, they were in for a reality check. Sease was there to give a show, and he wasn't about to tone it down for anyone. When Candy Liquor hit, the whole energy in the room changed. The crowd knew what was about to go down. Women would lose it. Guys would probably just laugh, all knowing. And Sease? He'd fully get into it. He didn't just sing the song. He performed it. Dropping to his knees, turning the mic stand into a prop that made things very clear. Let's just say it wasn't subtle. And teasing the crowd with every move. Some folks loved it, others were clutching their pearls. But he fed off that. His whole thing wasn't just singing, it was making sure people felt something, whether that was hype, secondhand embarrassment, or straight-up enjoyment.
Take it out, y'all. Can I take it out? Can I take it?
Not everyone was feeling it, though. Church groups were calling him trashy. Some places straight up refused to book him, saying his act was too much for their crowds. Even in the Southern soul and blues scene, where artists like Clarence Carter and Millie Jackson had pushed boundaries with their lyrics, Sease took it to a whole new level. Some people thought it was over the top. Others just called it entertainment. Honestly, it was both. That's what made artists like Marvin Sease stand out. They lived in that sweet spot where art and entertainment mixed. On one side, he was all about raw, unfiltered expression. His songs, yeah, they were pretty bold, but they hit on something real: desire, passion, and the funny side of both. But he was also a pro-entertainer, knowing exactly what his crowd wanted and how to give it to them. He wasn't writing for critics or looking for deep discussions about music's meaning. He was writing for the people who came to his shows, the ones ready to have a blast, not overthink every lyric. The backlash didn't faze him one bit. He knew who his people were, and as long as they kept showing up, he was going to keep giving them what they came for. That's where the magic happens, when an artist knows exactly who they're making music for and doesn't waste time trying to please the people who weren't ever going to get it. Marvin Sease didn't just perform music, he performed himself. And if you were in the right spot, with the right crowd, you got that it was all part of the show. Okay, now let's talk about Condom on Your Tongue.
This is what I want you to do. Put your condom on your tongue.
Marvin Sease's Condom on Your Tongue was one of those tracks that made you stop, not because it was the catchiest, but because it was so straight up, no filter, that you couldn't ignore it. Dropped on his Breakfast album, this song was exactly what the title promised. No sugarcoating, just a bold shout-out about safe sex, all served with Sease's signature raw delivery that made it impossible to look away. Let's be real, the lyrics were straight up wild. That chorus? Put your condom on your tongue, lick me till I come, baby. I'll do the same for you. Yeah, not your typical R&B track. It was in your face, daring, and definitely meant to make you squirm and think. Sease wasn't here for keeping it PG. He knew exactly what he was doing, using shock value to spotlight a real issue that was starting to make waves in the 80s: AIDS. Here's the kicker, though. Under all that shock factor, there's actually a pretty solid message. Sease kicks things off by straight up acknowledging that AIDS is real and scary. But instead of letting fear shut down intimacy, he flips the narrative. His point? You can still have love and desire, but only if you take care of your health. It's about owning your responsibility, making sure you can enjoy the good stuff without risking your safety. It's a low-key, empowering message tucked inside all that raw, unfiltered delivery.
Put your condom on your tongue. Lick me till I come, baby.
Does he push it too far for some people? Oh, 100%. The whole thing is out there, no doubt about it. But that's exactly why it hit so hard. While everyone else was still trying to dance around the topic of AIDS, Sease went full throttle. He wasn't here to whisper in your ear about responsibility. Nah, he was here to yell about it, making you squirm a little so you couldn't just brush off how serious the issue was. Sease was low-key ahead of his time. Yeah, the song got roasted for being raw, but fast forward and artists like The Weeknd, Lil Wayne, and even Beyoncé went down that same explicit path. They took taboo topics and flipped them into art, leaving us wondering if Marvin was the OG, just way too early for the mainstream. Sease got people thinking about stuff they'd rather ignore, but he did it with that Southern soul swagger that made it all feel like a bold, unapologetic statement. Did it make people squirm? Oh, for sure. But that's exactly what makes Condom on Your Tongue more than just another explicit R&B jam. It got people talking. And if art's all about sparking a convo, Marvin Sease totally nailed it, shaking things up in a way that no one saw coming. So, we've touched on it before, but let's talk about his relationship with the media.
Can I take it out, y'all? Can I take it out? Can I take it?
So, yes, tracks like Candy Liquor and Condom on Your Tongue weren't just edgy, they were straight up obliterating the usual boundaries. Needless to say, it caused a major uproar. Venues and radio stations started turning their backs, calling him out for being too explicit and too real. Some places flat out refused to touch his music, saying it was too much for their audiences. Sease was right in the middle of that tug of war between doing his thing and trying to fit into a box that wasn't built for him. Here's the twist. The world's changed. If Marvin Sease were around today, he'd probably be on a whole different level. With social media blowing up and the media game completely flipped, stuff that used to get shut down or banned could go viral in a heartbeat. Now, artists like Cardi B,
7 days a week, wet and gushy, make that pull-out game weak.
Lil Nas X,
hit that back room.
or The Weeknd can drop tracks with all the explicit content they want and still build huge followings. Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, you name it. They've got all the platforms to push their work without anyone trying to censor them. Back in Marvin's day, getting shut down by radio and venues wasn't just a bummer, it was pretty much game over for a career. If he wanted to be heard, he had to rely on the old school channels. If those shut him out, that was it. No way to reach the masses. Fast forward to today, an artist can drop anything directly to fans. Social media has totally flipped the script, cutting out all those gatekeepers that used to control what we saw and heard. A song that gets blacklisted by the radio? Now it could blow up on TikTok or Twitter, getting shared, remixed, and spread like wildfire without needing a mainstream shout-out. Back in Marvin's time, fighting for freedom of expression was all about battling the media and public spaces that kept him out. But today, artists have the freedom to post directly to fans, skipping all that traditional gatekeeping. Sounds like a win, right? But there's a flip side. Social media means you get to skip past censors, but it also means your every move, every word is under a microscope. Cancel culture? Viral trends? That's the new reality artists live with now. Sease didn't have to worry about that. His struggle was with the conservative powers controlling the media. Today's artists still face the same issues, but they've got the added pressure of being instantly judged and critiqued by the entire world. Social media totally flipped the game when it comes to controversial art. Back in Marvin's day, the system shut him down, but now artists have way more room to do their thing without being silenced. The downside? They've got to deal with a world where everything is on blast 24/7 and nothing stays low-key for long. If Sease had the chance today, his no-holds-barred style probably wouldn't just survive, it'd thrive. He was ahead of his time, pushing limits when no one was ready for it. In today's world, he'd probably be a legend, but a very different kind of one. Marvin definitely didn't hold back with his music, but that came with its own set of problems. One of the biggest issues people had with his tracks was how they talked about women. Songs like Candy Liquor got slammed for being super objectifying, treating women more like props for male pleasure than actual people. His lyrics were often straight-up graphic, painting women in a way that just played into old, harmful stereotypes. People had some strong opinions about Sease's music, especially when it came to how he talked about women. Some listeners were all about the rawness, seeing it as a bold celebration of sexuality without holding back. But for others, it was a problem, reinforcing the idea that women were just objects to be used. And then add in his over-the-top stage antics with some pretty suggestive moves and audience interactions, and it didn't help his image at all. The whole package just stirred up a lot of criticism. On top of all the drama around his lyrics and stage moves, Sease often found himself in hot water legally. His explicit content didn't exactly sit well with local laws and community standards, so he'd get hit with canceled shows, fines, and even some run-ins with the law. Every time he tried to push boundaries, he butted heads with the rules, making his whole career one big legal tug-of-war. Even though Sease didn't end up facing any big criminal charges, the constant drama with the law and all the hate he got just added fuel to his controversial image. He became known for being this rebellious figure who didn't care about pushing limits, musically or socially. Some people couldn't get enough of him, while others couldn't stand him. Either way, he was always turning heads.